Hello everyone, in this video I will show you how to create terrains in Revit using Lands Design and Rhino inside Revit. So the first thing that we're going to do is opening Rhino inside Revit. And here you have these definitions that you can learn how to load in the link in the description of this video. Let's open Rhino. And here in Rhino we have Lands Design, where we have many commands, but today we will focus on creating terrains. So we have three different ways to create them. We can create them from curves, we can also import a DEM file, or we can use the Earth elevation data command. We're going to use the last one. So here we can choose an area, for example, let's say that we want this one here. And we will define a boundary saying that we want to create a Lands Design terrain. Okay, let's hit import. And here we have the terrain already created in Lands Design. So I will show you now how easy is to transfer this terrain to Revit. You just need to click on this icon here. And just like that, we have our terrain here in Revit. So let's use this shaded mode. And okay, I want to show you that this is actually Revit native object. You can see that it is tagged here as a topography, and we can also modify it or use the Revit commands working with topographies. Like for example, we can modify this contour line display here. Instead of 1000, we will say that we want an interval of 5000. So this is the terrain, but now we want to make some operations on it. So we will go back to Rhino. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is to create a cut and fill. For that we will need a closed curve. Okay, something like that. And now we are going to move this closed curve where we need it. Okay, so now we can run the cut and fill command, which is this one here. We click on it, we select the terrain. Now we need to specify the angle for the slope. We will say it is 45 degrees. And now we need to choose the curve. And just like that, we have our cut and fill created here. How to transfer this to Revit? Okay, we're going to click here on terrains, and just like that, we will get our terrain Revit updated. Okay, so here we have our cut and fill in Revit. Okay, so what if we want to modify this cut and fill now? Let's say, for example, if we want to change the angle for the slope. So we can do that from Lands Design again. We go back here in Lands Design, selecting the terrain, we will get this panel, input data, where we can see all the operations that we have made in our terrain. For example, here we have the cut and fill, and here we can change the angle to, for example, 20. Okay, and here we have it updated. Now again we can go back to Revit and click on terrains to update the terrain in Revit with the slope that we have redefined. Okay, so here we have the terrain updated. So now we can go back to Lands Design to create a hole. For that we're going to need again a curve. We can use this one again. Okay, so to create a hole, we just need to click on this command to pick the terrain, and then to pick the curve that we are going to use to create the hole. So here we have it. You can see that this hole has these vertical faces here. We just need to go back to Revit and click again on the terrains icon. Okay, so here we have the hole. As you may know, Lands Design is a BIM software. That means that we have this geometry, but we also have information in the model. We have, for example, this command here, volume of earth moving, where we can see by selecting the terrain, the amount of material from cuts and also from fills. This is transferred to Revit through parameters. That means that if we go back to Revit and click on the terrain, here we have a parameter, two parameters actually created, holes and fills, where we have this information. Okay, we have these two parameters, but actually we can create our own parameters. What I mean is, if you click here on this terrain and go to properties, parameters, here we have some parameters already created, like for example the name, which could be terrain, and also a description saying this is my terrain. We can create a new custom parameter saying, for example, project name in the general category, okay, and we will give this a value saying my project, for example. Okay, so all these parameters are transferred to Revit with the same workflow, just by clicking on them. Now we haven't updated them yet, so we don't have this new parameter here, or for example the name has its own value, the description doesn't have any value, but just by clicking here on the terrains icon, we will get all of our parameters here in Revit. So here we have our parameters: name, terrain, description, this is my terrain. We also have the holes and fields, and here we have the new custom parameter that we have created in Lands Design called project name with the value my project, which we could override here if we wish to do that. Okay, let's go back to Rhino, and the following operation that we're going to do is to create a path. So to create a path we will need a curve. We're going to do it going from this hole to the cut and fill, and for that we can use this top view here with the 2D representation of the terrain. Okay, so we're going to say that we want a curve going from here and doing something like this until here. Okay, now let's go back to the 3D, and we are going to adjust this curve to the terrain. Okay, and now that we have this, I think we can create the path. We just need to run the command, select the terrain, let's say we want a width of 20 meters, for example, and the angle for the slope. We will leave it as 45 degrees. And just like that, we need to also pick the curve. Okay, so now we can delete this curve here, and let's transfer this path to Revit. Okay, so here we have the path, as you can see. We can also create a division in our terrain, or many divisions. There is a tool for this called divide. So let's create here a curve. So here we will use this command divide, select the terrain again, and then the curve. And just like that, we have our division created. We cannot see it here, but we can go to the input data panel, and here you have the division created. So these divisions, if we go back to Revit and update the terrain, they are transferred, as you can see here, as Revit subregions. In fact, when we have made this cut and fill and the hole and the path, we have created with them other subdivisions here, as you can see. And these subdivisions have been transferred to Revit as subregions as well, so that we have the possibility to select them individually. So for example, we can select here just the cut and fill, or maybe just this subdivision, or just the hole that we have created before. What if we want to delete one of these subregions or subdivisions? There is no problem about that. We can delete one of these subdivisions here in Lands Design. For example, we can delete the one for the cut and fill, just coming here to the input data panel and selecting the subdivision that we want to remove. And that's it. Now we only have 3 subdivisions in this terrain. So we can update this again in Revit. And just like that, we have this subregion removed also in Revit. So the last thing I will show you here is how to define a boundary for this terrain in Lands Design. So let's go to the top view, and here we will choose this 2D representation for the terrain, and let's create a boundary for this terrain. Okay, and if we go back to the 3D view, and for this we will use this pick boundary command, where we need to select again the terrain and then choose the curve. So once we have our boundary applied here in Lands Design, once again we can go back to Revit and update the terrain. So that's it. That's how easy and fast it is to work with terrains in Revit using Lands Design and RhinoLands in Revit.